Hello everybody, my name is Marcel. I'm the head of product engineering at Tangany, and I'm going to show you how to set up your environment with the Tangany APIs by using the Tangany Partner Portal. So we first need to be able to access the Tangany Partner Portal. So if you do not already have an account, please reach out to our sales team or to our support team by writing an email to support@tangany.com to get up your Tangany Partner Portal account. So once you received the confirmation, just go to portal.tangany.com. And for the initial sign in, we need to click forgot password and then just type in your email address that you provided within the setup process and click on send verification code to get a verification code for this sign in. For me, it's like 734036. Verify the code. I do not want to change this email because it's totally fine. Click continue, and then we will set up once our second factor device. So just to take your mobile phone or what else and install your favorite second factor device app, for example Google or Microsoft. I will just continue with the Google one, scan this one, and have then to type in the first code by clicking continue, verify, and that I'm nearly done. So I just have to set up my password, confirmation of my password, continue, and no, I don't want to save. That's it. So we are in. That is the Tangany Partner Portal. We are on the home page, gives us a brief summary of what is included for now in the Tangany Partner Portal. So let's walk through this. We have like multiple levels of organization things. So at the very upper level we have workspaces. Workspaces, you could imagine like a closed and isolated data environment. So for example, if you are starting to test or develop things, you could create your first workspace within a closed environment just for testing or developing purposes. You could define if this workspace is only a sandbox workspace or it will be a productive workspace. Another use case could be if you are, for example, developing any kind of white label solution. You need maybe multiple APIs, API accesses with different data environments, for example, acting like a reseller. Then you could set up an own workspace for each of your partners as well, so to separate different data environments from each other. In Workspaces, we have subscriptions. Subscriptions will be created per product, so you could have a subscription for the custody API, for the customers API, and also for the settlement API if you need it. Just keep in mind that it's only allowed to create one subscription per product within one workspace, so there will be a maximum for now of 3 subscriptions in a workspace. Of course, you could only have like customer and custody API subscription in a workspace as well. It will not be possible to add, for example, 2 customer API subscription to one workspace. The next level is the API access. Imagine an API access like the final thing to access the data environment that we just created within Workspaces and subscriptions. There we will set up some permissions, settings, and of course the credentials at the end. So let's start right now, just creating our first workspace. I will call it my first sandbox workspace, and then I just have to select my environment. If you have a fresh initial account set up, you will just see sandbox here. So I'm going to continue also with sandbox account. To be able to create productive subscription, Therefore you would need a signed contract with Tangany, and our support team will enable you then to access this productive workspace setting. So clicking next, we got a confirmation. We could now go to continue with creating the subscription, but we could also just go back and see our workspace overview. So imagine having multiple workspaces. We would see in every single workspace here. We could jump into the workspace. We could also change things like changing the name. We could also deactivate it. And we have here an overview over available products. So this is also a setting that is made by our customer support team in the background. So if we just have a setup with the custody and customers API in place, we wouldn't see a settlement API here, for example, as available product. But yeah, let's continue with the next level. This is a subscription level. For now, we are not having any subscription. On the top right, we see the selected workspace that is just now behind my webcam video here. But yeah, on the top right there is the setting for the selected workspace. So if you have multiple workspaces, just be sure you have selected the right workspaces on top of right. So create workspace. We see also the selected workspace right here. And then let's create our first subscription. So I will call it my first custody subscription, and of course select the custody API as my product, and then clicking create. From that point on, our background process is starting, and the creation of the whole environment will be done in the background. This could take up to a minute. There are several steps in the background, like creating the key vault where your private keys will be managed in the future, will be created for you. We don't have to wait, so we could just create a second subscription. Meanwhile, let's call it my first customer's subscription. We can only select customer and settlement now because the custody subscription is already created, and we are allowed only to create one custody subscription for our workspace. So continue with the customer API here, click create. Let's go to the subscription overview, and now you see this is still disabled because the creation process is still in progress. Yeah, now it's done. We could just refresh this page here, and now we will see it's also activated. So now we are able to use our both subscriptions. Just to note here, we have an expire date for all our subscriptions, especially for Sandbox subscriptions. It's by default in 14 days. So make sure to keep that in your mind when developing things. Yeah, let's continue to the detail page of a subscription. So after the creation of a subscription, we could still change some settings here. We could dive in the subscription settings. We will be able in the future to add more users to access the subscription. We could change the display name, and we could also deactivate the subscription. Yeah, let's keep it for now like that. We have two subscriptions in place, and now let's move forward to the API access to finally get into usage of the Tangany APIs. For now, no API access is created, so let's create the first one. We want to have my first custody credential, or let's call it API access. The credential will be created within that step. Yeah, it's the custody API that I want to create an API access for. So now we have permissions. The permission set that you will see here is provided by the Tangany account management team. So the support team will set up the permissions that you are able to select here. So in my case, I'm not allowed to use mainnets for now, but I can set up my application to manage wallets, to send transactions, to use custom RPCs, or to use the gas tank. So let's make an example that I'm building an application that is just for onboarding purposes. and I do not want to allow this application to send transaction or to use the gas tank. I just want to allow this application to manage wallets. So I'm going to create an application to manage wallets. I will have an API access. We see it here with the subscription, with the permissions, and then we will see create credentials. That's the most important thing to access the API later. Let's just go quickly through all things that I mentioned here. We have an IP whitelisting in place so that you can specify an IP address that is allowed to access or to use this API access. We have a recipient allow list that makes no sense when the API access is not allowed to send transactions right now. Then we have our authentication example, and we could again deactivate or delete things here. Yeah, let's go back to this one. We have to create a credential. To access Tangany APIs, we will have a set of client ID and client secret in place to get our authentication token and to access finally the APIs. So we have our client ID right here, and we need a client secret. We can create the client secret here. So I will call it my first custody credential. It's valid until the 2nd of September. So let's create it. And then we will see it here. It's highlighted and it will be obfuscated forever until 16 seconds, or if we refresh this page. So make sure to copy this one and keep it in a very safe place. Because if you have this combination of client ID and client secret, you will be able to access our APIs and therefore your assets as well, if provided the specific permissions. We could also create another one or multiple ones. For example, could make one for 1 year. So create one more. So this is immediately obfuscated, and this will also be obfuscated if I just refresh my page here. That's it. Yeah, so that's it for the custody API. Let's do it one more time for the customer API as well. So I will make my first customer API access, customers API. So here we don't have permissions. We just have, or we have instead the roles or a role-based setting. So to access every endpoint in the customer API, the full access is the editor role. For different use cases, we have provided some other roles. So imagine you have a third party accessing your customer API, or yeah, for example, for onboarding purposes or for KYC sharing, we could imagine some different roles here. Just to start through, we should select the editor role to have the full permission. Continue. Let's dive in this API access. Same settings that you already know. Yeah, let's also create our credential here. I will provide my first customer credential, create, and we again make sure to copy our client secret. Keep in mind that every API access has its own combination of client ID and client secret. Yeah, so that's it. We have now our two API accesses with the manage wallets permission in case of custody and the editor permissions in case of customers API. We have set up two subscriptions in our single workspace, my first sandbox workspace. And if we now go back to our homepage, we see multiple check marks. We set up our workspace, we set up our subscription, we set up our API access, and we are now ready to create our tokens and finally use the Tangany APIs. So let's jump over to docs.tangany.com to access our API documentation and continue with the Tangany customers API, and then make sure to select the version 2. The version 1 is the one who uses the old subscription model to authenticate. Starting with the partner portal needs to select the version 2 for all APIs. So be sure you have selected the version 2 of any our APIs. In the introduction, we have a link to our Postman collection. Let's roughly walk through this. Open the Postman collection. We also have our 3 APIs here. And for example, you could just list the customers. Of course, it's empty after creation, but we could just use the get customers. If you click on the customers API collection, you now see here we have to provide our client ID and our client secret. And if we will do that, we would be able to start through and list our customers, post our first customers, and so on, and start using the Tangany API. So I hope that video helps you to onboard at the Tangany Partner Portal and the Tangany APIs. Have fun with that, and if you have any question, just reach out to us and provide any feedback that could help us. And thank you for your attention and have fun. Bye bye.